partners. You heard from LA CAN. You heard from LA Christian Health Center. You know, they do a lot of work. They're very committed to the community as well. And some of the things that we have been doing together with them to create awareness, support infrastructure, to make sure that during this pandemic that we are doing the right thing as it relates to housing policy, economic policy, and just as being an appropriate partner and supporter to the community at large, you know, that exists still out in the streets, as well as our residents. We've heard from elected officials and some of the actions that they've taken to support our efforts, to support the community efforts, to make sure that they responded to the initial information that was being shared in these meetings. And those meetings communicated clearly how the hygiene kits and the food was necessary to our resident community. Some of our SRO standing for single resident occupancy, they were communicating to us that they needed, you know, food and hygiene supplies because they were in community kitchens and community bathrooms that they share. We also heard from a national policymaker last week, and the position that they're taking along with some of the support they have in regards to like our concerns, policies, and issues on a nationwide level. Everything as it related to housing and health and financial support that's going to be needed on an ongoing basis. And again, in just a couple of minutes, you know, we'll have the PowerPoint slide back up on screen, just to show the picture of some of the actions and activity that's being taken among our community partners, along with our employees. Tonight, we're really excited to talk about a very unique collaboration that not only has been active in our community for an extended amount of time, but it's currently partnering with us during this tough time of COVID-19. But most importantly is some of the actions and targets that are going to be taken over the course of time once a lot of this passes. This passes in LA and passes nationwide. We are representing the private industry. We met through groups and collaborations called YPO, and they're going to be sharing information with you shortly. One of the key areas that we want to focus on as it relates to some of the collaborations that we've had, we've identified needs, identified the solutions, and only implemented those solutions through the collaborations. This week alone was an accumulation of a lot of things that were significantly successful stories. We got a lot of our partners that you heard around the hygiene kits. We raised a significant amount of money to support our residents. We received shower shoes from Right to Shower and Lava May X. We have collaborated with LA CAN. We have started to implement and are in the middle of continuing to put hand washing stations through the community. Today, for the first time, we distributed to 2 of our properties the hygiene kits that a lot of your efforts and a lot of your support on this call got to send and deliver to us so that we could put them in kits. And those kits included shower shoes, soap, toothpaste, socks, quite a few other things to make sure that the hygiene kits, you know, were delivered that were critically needed. A special thanks to Soul to Souls for making sure that happened for us, including, you know, Bombas, who provided the socks as well. So organizations like that collaborated with each other to collaborate with us, and all of that was in response to the needs that were identified and the solutions that you all provided for us. On the next slide is another example of a collaboration that we're working on. So in the previous slide, you saw a picture of our team members delivering food to residents and employees. It's really important to understand, you know, in our property management company, the employees often live on site and are very committed to that community, so they get supported very similarly to the residents, because we need to bring supplies and resources to them. On this slide, you're not seeing social distancing, and you're not seeing the face masks, only because this picture was taken pre-COVID-19, when we were making sure that we were collaborating in the community and putting strategic targets out there. One of those collaborations that we want to make sure that we're focused on in communicating with you, because there's been a lot of questions around this, is what type of activity does Skid Row Housing Trust, in addition to housing, what do we do to support, the community at large? And one of the active proposals that we are pursuing is something called an access center. So we want to participate and facilitate, community outreach through a trust access center. And even though you can see the bullets on your screen right now, I am just really excited to communicate them, because this is, again, symbolic, much like the hygiene kits and the food and the lunches that you all supported us in distributing to our community of residents. We want to expand that. It's going to be located on at 1317 East 7th Street. It will increase the access to homeless services and resources right here at 7th and Central. It helps problem solve, navigate housing, and provide peer support. It will immediately help with crisis, shelter, and direct referrals for care. There's no unnecessary barriers like sobriety, disability, health, mental needs. This is really important, a really important initiative, because it focuses on what the continued work is going to be required to move forward. So COVID-19 is a really sad realization as to some of the awareness and some of the support that you all and we all have been advocating for. And we need to make sure that we are continuing those efforts, not just for our residents, but for the community at large. So very excited about this initiative, very excited to communicate all of our partnerships and our collaborations, very excited, that you continue to call in and listen to what we have to communicate on behalf of our residents, our employees. Very, very grateful for all the responses. You're going to see pictures, if you haven't seen them already, in our social media feeds, but we'll make sure that we communicate them, because this week was a very heavy but exciting lift of food and PPE and hygiene to our employees, to our residents, to the community at large, helping support all the needs that are out there. So very, very excited, about that. So thank you again. I'm about to transition into our first speaker. I'm very excited about this individual. He was participating and reaching out to us beforehand, and is continuing to collaborate with us on very, very unique ways. I'm about to introduce Adam Waldman. Adam is the owner and CEO of Refinery Creative, based out of Los Angeles. They produce creative advertising for the entertainment industry. Some of his clients include AMC, Bravo, Disney, Focus Features, and Fox, just to name a few. Adam is also a YPO member whose focus includes homelessness. Please join me in welcoming Adam Waldman.
Thanks, Lee. I appreciate that. I am here mostly representing just myself, and I can speak to YPO and its task forces to try to move the needle on homelessness a little bit as well. A little bit about my history coming to you and to be sitting here with you guys. I grew up with a parent with mental health issues and financial and housing instability, and that never really left my psyche. And even with an extraordinary amount of business success, I still, to my core, believe that I'm one unlucky break away from finding myself at the mercy of the world around us, just as so many people are. And so I, a couple of years ago, started thinking about how I could make some impact, and began with the idea of sort of anti-recidivism and educating incarcerated and ex-incarcerated in my industry. I'm a graphic designer. You do not need a high school or college degree to be a graphic designer if you're good at what you do. No one really cares about a record if, you know, they can look you in the eye and see who you are. And it's a very empathetic and warm community once you're in it. And so that was sort of where I began my journey to see what I could do. And that evolved as I got involved with YPO. And YPO, for those of you who don't know, stands somewhat pretentiously for Young Presidents Organization, though I think they downplay what that stands for now. But it's essentially business owners. It's a global network of business owners with businesses above a certain size who are in positions of authority over their organizations, meeting to educate themselves and each other about everything, family, personal, business, and seeing how they can give back. So it's an educational group, it's a social group, and it's also an advocacy and sort of pro bono group, and that's where this initiative to do something about the homeless challenge nationwide, but based in LA. The nationwide initiative chose LA as its test bed because we certainly have a mountain to climb here in the city. So I signed up, not knowing any better, and sort of went all in. There are 4 or 5 different task forces that YPO started. One is for transitional housing, one is for permanent supportive housing, one is for mental health and homelessness, and there's one for employment and job training. There may be another, I'm not sure. And so I am a member of the permanent supportive housing, the transitional supportive housing, and the mental health task forces. And came through an acquaintance who you may know, Daniel Dart, has hosted an event which many of you may have attended parts of downtown, which was sponsored by Skid Row Housing Trust. And that's how I came into this circle. So the pieces that YPO, the parts of the organization that I am working with, I'm rambling, forgive me. I'll break it down into 2. One is permanent housing, and that group is working very closely with Skid Row Housing Trust to try to sort of change the game on how new projects get started and funded, to find ways where business can intersect, not necessarily for profit, but also not in a completely charitable where you hand over money and never see that money again, and sort of find new models for facilitating new housing, new opportunities, and that seems to be going very well. As we all know, these things move in fits and starts, and I think we're all very excited about the possibilities of working with Skid Row Housing and opening up more centers and seeing what the future can hold. And so that is sort of a longer term play that I wish we're moving fast enough to make an impact during this crisis, but I'm guessing will come later. And the other one is the interim housing task force, and that one is much more now, much more how can we get more shelters on the ground now? How can we clear out the red tape? And I'm sure you guys have heard about a lot of movement towards removing that red tape, and we seem to be almost completely coincidentally, by some grace, in the right place at the right time, or the wrong time, depending on how we all look at what's going on right now in the world, to be collecting because of our spheres of influence. You know, as business leaders in LA and frankly around the nation and around the world, we have access to infrastructure, to political leaders, to you know, if we're being crass about it, you know, our dollars give us access to agencies like Skid Row Housing and let our voices be heard more loudly, and all for the positive, all for the right reasons. And so allows us to connect those dots. And so that's sort of what I see my role as being, because I am certainly no expert in any of the on the ground issues that so many people are experiencing. I am just here to help, and I'm here to use whatever connections I have, whatever, you know, friendships I have, whatever my money can do, to try to connect the dots that seem to be in need of connecting. And that's been the biggest surprise for me, is how everyone wants the same thing. We all want solutions. And yet there is such a quagmire of conflicting agendas and politics, both lowercase p and uppercase p, that seem to just stymie any efforts to get something done. And we are getting very close to having a turnkey solution that really pulls away a lot of the no's, a lot of the red tape, a lot of the barriers, and allows us to get self-contained communities on the ground and modular pods. You know, we have a lot of new challenges given COVID on social distancing for these communities, and certainly funding challenges, but those are frankly the easier challenges sometimes. So things are moving, and things are moving more rapidly than I would have ever anticipated, and it's really exciting and heartening. And I'm still coming into every conversation with more questions than answers, mostly because I firmly believe that if I can help you resolve the question, or maybe the statement, if only this changed, whatever this is, then I could do X, Y, and Z. And so I sort of, that's what I want to know from everybody, is what would it take to really evolve this, to change the game. So I think that is enough of me rambling. That's where I'm coming from. So I'm going to introduce Brian Weiner, who is also a YPO member, also on this task force with me, and has a far deeper wealth of knowledge than I certainly do about the mental health piece of this, but also about all of it. He is the founder of Manifest Recovery Centers, which is a behavioral healthcare company which provides detox and outpatient treatment services for people struggling with substance and mental health issues. And his involvement with Skid Row started 30 years ago. So definitely has been at it for a long time and is very passionate about it. And I'll turn it over to him to tell you more. So Brian.
Thank you, Adam. Appreciate your allowing me to actually be included in the conversation. As Adam said, over 30 years ago, I was not even a teenager and was struggling with divorce. My mom got me involved in Gramercy Shelter and charity work to keep me away from drugs. One night, when we were actually getting a tour of the LA Mission, the bus driver took some kind of left turn and took us down to see Skid Row. And at that time, I had no idea why or what people living in cardboard boxes on the street even look like. But I became very touched when we were stopped at a light, and I looked outside the window to see a father covering his son with a jacket because it was super cold outside. And I remember getting home and talking to my mother about it and asking her a whole bunch of questions. And that prompted me to start a citywide blanket drive, which became quite popular at that time and continued for many years to come. My mission to help those in need and those who are struggling with hunger and homelessness continued with Angel Harvest, which is an organization that collects the food that's left over from grocery stores and restaurants and weddings and events and delivers it to the food pantries around the city. My personal professional background has been primarily working with the ultra wealthy individuals and helping them to implement their charitable initiatives and their investments. People heard about me and wanted me to help them to create impact on a larger level. So some of the families that I worked with are, publicly known. The Buffett family is a family I've interacted with, and the Rhodes family as in fellowship. And one of the family members from the Rhodes family, about 6 years ago, who's been in recovery, said, "Hey, Brian, I'd like to help people find success in sobriety." And I said, "I don't need the first thing about it." But I said, "I want to help people, and I want to help you to do this." And we started Manifest Recovery Centers about 5 years ago. And at that time, I became enmeshed in the enormous challenge of this terrible disease that impacts not only people on Skid Row, but of all walks of life and all classes. And I was touched, and I basically shifted my entire focus towards this community because I also saw a huge gap in service quality, a huge need for professionalism and institutional quality service. Because unfortunately, a lot of people running these companies, whether they were nonprofit or for-profit companies, had no business backgrounds or business savvy, were running on thin budgets that were, unfortunately, especially now, being cut. And so I have taken it on as a personal mission to work with the city and the county and the state. Unfortunately, and this may not come as a surprise to many of you, a lot of the bureaucracy and red tape that I experienced at both the state, federal, and local levels was so enormous that it became clear to me that even the leadership I was speaking to, the county supervisors, Dr. Ferrer, and other leaders, were unfortunately blocked from being able to spend the enormous funds that they had allocated because they didn't know how to allocate it. The billions of dollars, the over $6 billion given to County of LA and the state of California by SAMHSA to deal with substance and mental health abuse and the opioid crisis has been largely unspent in the last 4 years. That is a true crime, actually. And when I talk to the leadership about it, they don't really have any solutions. They don't know what to do about it. And so when I joined the YPO task force, one of the initiatives and one of the purposes that I have is to not only educate my co-YPO members, but really focus on what I believe my experience has led me to, which is that it really is going to take organizations like Skid Row and the for-profit world to come together where the city, state, and municipalities just can't, to work together to solve this problem. We intend, as Adam so aptly put it, to work with the counties and the leadership at all levels to influence them with our clout, to remove the red tape and the barriers in place such that my 6-year-old son and my 8-year-old daughter don't ever have to know from a Skid Row, because there will be no Skid Row. The fact that we're in the year 2020 and it's over 30 years later and that there is a Skid Row is a true crime, and it is unconscionable as a civilization. I don't need to convince anyone, I think, on this call of that. But what I hope to convince people on this call of is that YPO wants to make a difference. And what Adam and I are entrusted to do is to find other organizations that want to be a part of the solution so that we can work collaboratively to impact the housing market, the job market, and to get people who are needing desperately treatment for drugs and mental health, the treatment that they need and that they deserve. And if we can do that, and I know and I believe it, we have ideas that are very much actionable, we can really make the difference and make this problem go away once and for all. I'm stopping at that point. I think at this point, I guess I'm supposed to introduce our next speaker, so I'm going to do my best to do that. Hold on. There's Pamela. Okay. And I'm trying to look for the intro that I was given in order to do that. But I can tell you from what I had the pleasure of speaking with Pamela before, Pamela can speak very personally about Skid Row housing because she experienced it firsthand. And having that perspective, as we all know, you can't replace it. And she has a true passion for working with the clients and the people of Skid Row Housing Trust resident to be able to make an impact at the highest level. And so I hope I'm doing her justice, because I, for some reason, can't find the email I'm supposed to. But I think Pamela can be instrumental in helping us to find solutions to some of these lingering problems.
Good evening. I hope that everyone is well and staying safe. Thank you. Before I share my story, I want to talk about COVID-19 and how I've been coping with it. For me, first of all, I've been dealing with it with a lot of prayer, a lot of trust in God, and faith. I've also been depending on other frontline soldiers, not just within Skid Row Housing Trust, but other agencies as well, because what I know is that we all have a wealth of resources if we just put our heads together and begin helping people. Personally, during this time, I've just been able to practice a different level of self-care, a better level of self-care. Even though I'm a person that's a naturalista, I like the nail shop and all, but I've had to just, accept myself just how I am. And that's been great for me. Family-wise, I've been more available to my daughters and my grandson because we really had to just rely on one another. As a resident, I know that a lot of my neighbors were really dependent upon the local food banks for the bulk of their meals. And with that in mind, even though we have a lot of food deliveries and a lot of people donating, I just saw an opportunity to be more of service in the community because it takes a village. So I started using the donations that were given and cooking food for people and feeding people. And once people found out what I was doing, they started to give me more food to cook and give away. So not just for my neighbors inside, but also for my neighbors outside. So I kind of got like a little soup kitchen going on, and it's pretty cool, you know, because being a service is a type of paycheck that you can't cash, but you can definitely feel deep in your soul. So on to my story. I want to say that people with disabilities make up over 40% of the homeless population, and I never imagined I'd be one of them. My name is Pamela, and I'm a CSH Speak Up advocate. Back in 2003, I was a single mom, taking care of my two daughters, working as a hairstylist, and things in my life were going pretty decent for a change. Both of my girls were born by C-section, but in 1998, when my youngest daughter was born, something weird happened. I ended up being in a lot of pain from the waist down, especially in my left leg. But even in pain, I had to press on because I had responsibilities. On July 15, 2003, I woke up and I was very sick. I went to the emergency room and was admitted and diagnosed with a serious but treatable infection called cellulitis. The cause was lymphedema, a condition which has no cure and no pain relief. I was devastated about it all, but especially the part about not being able to go back to work. I stayed in the hospital a whole month and went home, was bedridden 6 more months, 7 whole months, while my bills and my problems were piling up. Being no stranger to trauma, I had already started drinking and using at a very early age. But when this started, I started drinking and using heavier than ever before, picking up and using painkillers, trying but failing to ease the fear and the pain of what was to come. My emotions, along with everything else, kept me in a downward spiral. When I made it to Skid Row in 2010, I was scared, alone, racked with pain and guilt because I failed. Skid Row, come on now, you guys. I had to drink and smoke in order to deal with that place because honestly, I felt like there was no hope for change. But one morning, I walked into the downtown Women's Center and a woman behind the desk saw me. Not the outer shell of what I'd become. She saw me. And she asked me what was wrong. And for the first time, I got honest about everything, the addiction, the alcoholism, all my problems. She started talking to me about complete recovery. I was like, was that even possible? And then she started talking to me about affordable, supportive housing. I had no idea what that was, but I knew that I needed both of those things for a new start. Finally seeing a way out, I went into treatment October 12, 2012. And after that, I went directly to a sober living home. I even had to return to Skid Row 3.5 years sober. But you see, this time it wasn't as bad. It was hard, but it was different because I had my mind made up to do something different. I stayed at the Union Rescue Mission for 8 months, all the while refusing to give up. I wanted to keep my program of recovery. Then on the day before Thanksgiving of 2016, I got my place. And just being able to take care of my basic needs meant so much to me. I was able to focus. So I went back to school and I fell in love with abnormal psychology. Later on, I got a job right down the street from me, working for Skid Row Housing Trust as a peer advocate. You know, I never imagined that the same place that I didn't want to be in had something just for me. I had an opportunity to give back. Who knew that my pain had a purpose? Sharing my lived experience and resources gives me the opportunity to encourage others who are in need. That there's opportunities to grow and to change, and there's a lot of resources. It says to the person, when you come from a lived experience aspect, that I truly get you and I understand you. And when I do it straight from my heart. for quite a while, I was being encouraged by quite a few of my colleagues that were case managers to step up. But I was hesitant because I'm a resident. And I knew that residents didn't just get hired to be case managers. I had doubts and I had fears about how that was going to work out and what if it didn't. In November of last year, I came home from work and I was cooking my dinner and someone knocked on my door and it was my case manager. And that was rare because she didn't do that. And she said, I know that I don't do this, but something told me to come here and ask you, why don't you apply for that case manager position? And I argued her down and she kept lifting me up. And we combated and went back and forth about the pros and the cons. And she kept strategically showing me that there was hope and that it was possible. And I listened to her. On the second year anniversary on the job, my team got a raise early that morning. And then I went to interview with 3 of my wonderful colleagues. And it wasn't just like an interview, it was like just a personal conversation. And my answers seemed to come with ease. And I kind of felt like that I had the job, but because it was the holiday season, I hadn't heard from anyone. So I had my doubts and I just started telling myself, well, it's probably because I'm a resident, because they don't hire residents to be case managers. But after the holiday season was over, I heard from Jack, and Jack told me that he had heard that I had a phenomenal interview. And after a heart-to-heart talk with him and Alma, who's another person over case management, you know, they told me that I had the job. And I'm just happy to have this job. I'm really grateful. It feels good to talk to people and they know where you're coming from. They know and they see and believe that it can also happen for them. And it's not just me, because other people are more capable to do what I'm doing and even more right in our building. But, you know, sometimes we might not see that based on their condition. But it's an opportunity to share and give hope and to uplift other people. You know, I'm just really grateful for where I'm at today. As a peer advocate, I wrote a program for outreach to employ the residents to go back out in the community and help people come in and get their housing and other services that they need. And hopefully I'll write the grant for that. You know, I've started learning grant writing right here on the job. I've had a lot of opportunities to do different things like traveling, meeting different people, telling them about Skid Row, talking about collaboration with other people who are doing homeless services and putting our heads together to find solutions to this problem. And it's just been a great journey. I don't really know what else to tell you. My goal is this fall to go back to school for social work. It's good having lived experience and like a street degree, but I want to get my master's and learn how to work and change policy and create programs. My heart's desire is to have a nonprofit just giving people their basic needs and supplying them with resources for housing and jobs and things like that. You know, I wouldn't change my journey at all, but I want to say to you guys, do me a favor, when you see someone on the street that's homeless, try to remember my story and think, you know, that person might have purpose. We all do. Trust me, I know, because I was out there on the street. Thank you for letting me share my story. Now, allow me to introduce you to Jet Doy. She's our Vice President of Fund Development and an expert of philanthropy and communications. Jet?
Pamela, thank you so much. I always love hearing you speak. Sorry about that, everybody. A little technical difficulty on our end. I want to thank everybody for joining the call and participating tonight. We really appreciate that everybody makes time to and to make a commitment to understanding these issues in our community more deeply. I would love to thank Adam and Brian and Pam for spending this time with us tonight and for supporting the trust in our work with their time and their voices. And so every week we have the same calls to action. You can always click the links on your screen and make a direct donation to our work to support our COVID-19 response fund. Advocacy is more and more important. We and many others are working through unimaginably complex bureaucratic issues, and our key message currently for city, county, state, and federally elected officials is, we want people to say that they support more funding for permanent supportive housing and health and social services for people who have experienced and are experiencing homelessness. We have an Amazon wish list, and you can send, supplies directly to the trust, and our health and social services team provides those to our residents. We are still working out the details on virtual volunteerism, and we'll have more information about that next week. And then if you're on our mailing list, to join our mailing list. And if you are on our mailing list, we would love for you to suggest to a friend that they join our mailing list. And so those are the ways that you can this week and always support the trust. And we do appreciate your spending this time with us. Thank you so much.
Thanks, Jet. And now we have the details for next week. Please join us. We'd love to hear from you. Send an email to info@skidrow.org. We have all the details.
Erica, do you want to go over the slide for next week?
Yes, I'm talking. And so yeah, here are the details. Please send an email to info@skidrow.org. And
Erica, we can't hear you, so I'm going to go ahead and let everybody know that if you have anything that you'd like to share with us, you can reach us at info@skidrow.org. Our next virtual community meeting is Thursday, May 14th at 6:30 p.m. You can join by phone or on the web using this link. And then next week, we'll publish this deck when we send out the invitation for that meeting. And we very much appreciate everybody joining us tonight. For Q&A, I have not seen any questions in the chat stream. And so with that, I think that I'll just thank everybody and let you go. I hope you have a fantastic week. Thanks for joining us.